What if I told you that Chris Claremont's X-Men did Get Out before Jordan Peele? That Storm was the first Marvel character to ever get put in the sunken place, and more importantly, why it's all Emma Frost's fault. We're going to talk about all that and more right now.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Jordan Peele's Get Out is probably one of the most important films in, I would not just say all of black cinema, but just cinema in general. It's a movie that lived and still lives on the lips and hearts of many people across multiple different colors, creeds, backgrounds, whatever. And it's also one of those, like what I feel is an instant classic. It's something that literally everyone has tried to get on the bandwagon with on some level or another, whether they mean to intentionally or not. Like, it's one of those films that just lives rent-free in a lot of people's heads. But the funny thing about the movie Get Out, and it's not to say that Jordan Peele completely ripped this from X-Men, but it's just funny because a very similar situation kind of happened in X-Men many years ago. Now, many of you guys are probably already familiar with characters like Emma Frost, aka the White Queen, former member of the Hellfire Club, and a group that made their debut roughly around the time of the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix saga. Well, Emma Frost was largely known as just straight up bad guy. By today's standards, she's considered a good guy, but she has an incredibly dark past. I know everybody's real high on her right now because of Marvel Rivals, the thickness is real, and I'm totally here for it.
White Queen mind control.
But I will always remember the time that Emma Frost sent Storm to the sunken place. This all took place in and around Uncanny X-Men number 151 and 152. Not terribly long after the moment that probably lives rent-free in a lot of Kitty Pryde fans' heads, the Professor Xavier is a jerk moment. This was all in and around the time where Kitty was kind of on the outs with Xavier, and more importantly, was still trying to find her place amongst the X-Men. But roughly about the time she was really kind of finding her footing on the team and discovered that she actually really enjoyed being at the Xavier Institute, lo and behold, Kitty's parents decided they no longer wanted her there. They wanted to put her someplace else, so they decided to send her to the Massachusetts Academy. Now, at the time, it wasn't well known that the Massachusetts Academy was run by Emma Frost. This would all be stuff we learn in the very opening salvo of the story, and then later on, Kitty would ultimately relent and go to the Massachusetts Academy, largely because both her and Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, decided maybe it wasn't the worst idea to look into it and see what the hell was going on. Now, things get kind of weird here in this particular moment just because where everything leads, Storm kind of seems to be apprehensive about the idea at first of Kitty going, but then after learning that Emma Frost is involved in all this, that she's going to be the one who's going to be overseeing Kitty's future, she almost kind of, I won't say quickly turns on a dime, but it's definitely pretty close to it. But at the end of it all, Kitty ends up going to the Massachusetts Academy, and Storm is the one who drives her there, drops her off and everything. It's in this moment that Storm ends up running into Emma Frost. Now, Emma Frost and Storm have history already because of the Phoenix Saga, the X-Men's first interaction with the Hellfire Club, Storm actually being taken hostage by Emma Frost and interrogated by her. And there's even the very awkward moment where Storm is slick turned into a mammy during Jean's time being a part of the Hellfire Club for the briefest of moments. And this is the moment that Storm is effectively in the movie Get Out. The next time we see Storm, it's not Storm. Storm is no longer in control of her body. Now, what kind of makes this less of a Get Out and almost more of a Freaky Friday situation is because in the midst of all this, Storm suddenly is no longer acting like Storm. She seems to be in awe of the power that she possesses, but not in the way that we are accustomed to Storm being in awe of her own power. This is more of a, oh, this is my first time using these powers. And that's because It's no longer Storm, it's Emma Frost. We also see Storm throwing on Emma Frost at the time patented fur coat and cloak, as well as lighting up a cigarette, things that we just typically don't see Storm do, and also really throwing herself into the maniacal cackling and laughter. Also, more importantly, she's in direct connection with Sebastian Shaw. Now, the reason why all this was happening is because Emma Frost and Sebastian Shaw wanted to destroy the X-Men from within, and they figured the best way to accomplish this, especially at a time where Jean Grey is no longer around and effectively one of the more powerful members of the team. Storm, even back then at this time, was considered very freaking powerful, and while at the time the term and the ideas of Omega level mutants weren't really as cemented or even very much of a thing, here Storm was effectively the heavy hitter on the team, but also at the same time she was also the heart and soul of the team, and someone who pretty much everyone on the roster would look to for guidance. So what better way to take the X-Men down than taking the moral compass of the team and inverting it? And that's exactly what Emma Frost was plotting to do. Now, I said this was more of a Freaky Friday than a Get Out in some aspects, and it's because, while under normal circumstances in the movie Get Out, the black characters in question who are sent to the sunken place and had their bodies taken over by white people, this was less that situation just simply because in the instance of Get Out, those black people's consciousness are still within that body. It's just buried deep down in that sunken place. However, in this case, Storm is not still in the body that she was born with. She's now in the body of Emma Frost. Now, this effectively makes her a white woman and all that that entails. And at the same time, also removes from her not only her agency, but also takes away the power that she possesses. This was actually kind of a double-edged sword, though, because it was the same for Emma Frost. Emma Frost lost her telepathic abilities, so she's no longer able to read minds or dominate people using her mental powers, but she did have Storm's. But in this case, Storm now had access to Emma's incredible mental powers, her telepathy, and her ability to control the minds of others. She now had access to that. But the reason why I say, even though despite the overall makeup of this, it's actually more Freaky Friday and less a Get Out, the reason why I still hang my hat on the Get Out-isms of the story arc is ultimately because of the implications of it. The simple fact that Storm, at this point in time, had literally been turned upside down in what it is that she believed that she was. She was turned into a white woman. She went from being an African queen and goddess to being a just regular bog standard white woman. And also had her awesome and raw power stripped away from her. And not only that, but the fact that Emma Frost, well, technically she got what she wanted. She took Storm's body, and it was all in an effort to destroy the X-Men. In a particular point in this arc where Storm is believed to have been killed off by Emma Frost, Emma believing that she had accidentally unalived Storm in this particular two-parter of a story, she believes she's not going to be able to get her body back. And while Storm is very much alive and well, and is ultimately going to get her body back, Emma is now terrified of the idea that she is now stuck in a black woman's body. This is why I say, like, the racial implications of this story are not shied away from by any stretch of the imagination. Which is, once again, why I'm more willing to say Get Out as opposed to Freaky Friday. But the whole thing that kind of made this all hilarious and funny to me is that, while yes, Sebastian Shaw was the Black King, he was the guy who was largely in charge of the Hellfire Club for the majority of its run as we know it in publication history, and he's also very likely the mastermind behind the whole thing. What was hilarious was that when Emma Frost believed she was no longer going to be able to place herself back in her original body, as she's literally lamenting this because, you know, once again, she doesn't have her mental powers. Now, granted, the whole idea of her being able to put herself in Storm's body really had less to do with her powers. She used a ray gun in order to pull this off. But the fact that Storm's body was, supposedly dead, and Emma is stuck in a black body, she freaked out about it. But lo and behold, leave it to Sebastian Shaw to find a silver lining in Emma Frost's plight. In the midst of Emma's rant about being stuck in Storm's body, Sebastian Shaw steps in and is like, well, we could technically get you another body. You're not gonna be in your body again. We can get you another white woman. We can get you another S-tier white woman. That's not a problem. But there's really no reason for you to get out of this one. Like, Sebastian Shaw was basically trying to get him a cup of brown sugar. Let's just keep it a buck. He was trying to get him a whole cup of brown sugar, and it just was kind of funny just how this all played out. And how, I love how Emma actually kind of changed her tune once she realized that Sebastian Shaw liked her better as Storm. Even at a point where he's like, oh, I think Aurora Monroe would make an exquisite white queen. It's like... But at the end of the day, the reason why this doesn't last more than a couple of issues is because once Aurora is able to convince Kitty Pryde that she is in fact not the White Queen, but actually the woman who Kitty has looked to as a mentor and motherly figure, once all that is sussed out, Aurora is able to figure out how to wield the power of the White Queen, and despite not having the ray gun that was used to swap their consciousnesses, she is eventually able to get a hold of Emma Frost and use Emma's own power in order to swap places. Now, this all actually made Storm even more impressive in this moment because, once again, Emma didn't use her powers to swap bodies with Storm. She used technology to do it. And by today's standards, Emma Frost could very easily accomplish something like this with just her power alone. But Storm, having never been a telepath before a day in her life, was able to take Emma's own power after only having it for less than 24 hours and figured out how to use Emma's powers in ways that Emma did not know how to use her own power. That was actually pretty gangster. And also the little comeuppance they give to Emma Frost. Storm being able to shock the caucasity out of Emma Frost is also just a chef's kiss in and of itself. However, yeah, this is kind of why, if you read like current day X-Men anything, I know a lot of people were really confused as to why Storm and Emma Frost didn't get along during the Krakoan era at first in Jerry Duggan's Marauder series. They seem to have a little bit of beef, a little bit of bad blood, but that's the reason why. Like, this is ultimately the reason why Storm and Emma, while they're friendly now, Storm does not trust Emma on that level. Like, yes, there is, a little bit of camaraderie. Yes, Storm and Emma both realize they're on the same side of things. And while you could even accuse Storm and Emma of having a friendly relationship now, please believe Storm does not waste any time reminding Emma at any point she did not, that while she may forgive Emma and her villainous behavior of the past, she did not forget.